Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here. That is a quote from the guy who took over Enron after the debacle there. And for 40 years, he's been dealing with bankruptcies and shenanigans within different corporations. And this is the worst that he's seen. And it is in one of the formerly big crypto exchanges. So that has got to hurt all of the crypto bros out there who have been cheering on this non-regulatory space. Thoughts as you learn more about what has occurred at FTX?
Sure. It continues to be fairly heartbreaking, the way it's all come down. Uh, it's surely going to drive a lot of people away for a while. People who I'm sure a bunch of people lost money won't be able to recover it, and either will never come back to the space or won't come back for a very long time, which is too bad, for lots of reasons. It may change the way both this country and other countries regulate crypto, which doesn't really make sense to me, but doesn't mean it won't go that way, because that's how things go a lot, right? It's like, well, there was a fire on the left side of the street, so we're going to make sure the right side of the street is this, and this, and this. And it feels like that's how it's going to go a lot, or it's going to be an
That sounds
excuse at
like,
least.
I'm just going to jump in. That sounds like some good fire regulations. If we had a fire on the right side of the street, let's create some regulations that'll help fires on the left side of the street as well, if they were to have the same thing occur. Dude, I just want to say, I was in Spain, right? I was in the south of Spain and I was doing some work there. And I'm working with a family. And during the sort of whatever, we're having a meeting, you look out the window and there's a guy from the electric company who pulls up, goes to the cable that is hanging from the pole that's bringing electricity in the house, cuts it with these wire cutters. The power goes out, gets back in his van and drives off, leaving the cable just on the road. I was, of course, completely stunned. And
Yeah.
I was like, what is going on here? And, they said, oh, that happens about once a month because this whole development, all new houses, hasn't actually been completely approved by the government. So the electricity is brought in illegally, basically. So the electric company sends by someone to cut the power and left a live power line lying on the street. And I'm like, so what happens now? And he said, oh, we just get, the electrician comes by and he'll hook it back up. That's what it looks like when there's no regulations.
Sure. Or regulations just for certain types of folks, right? The electric companies sounds pretty protected there, and there's regulations around them, and they're still doing some stuff. I continue to believe that this is not very likely to impact the true long-term future of cryptocurrency and Web3, as we would call it. But I am less sure than I used to be because of the things we've been talking about. And regardless of what it does to the long-term future, it is incredibly painful to watch people lose, myself included, huge amounts of money. And for a lot of people, there are amounts that really affect their lives, and that's just really awful. And that's been happening, and I think it's going to continue to happen for a while.
So I think it's a good time to talk about how to avoid a crypto scam. And there's sort of those individual scams, and then there's scams on the big scale, like with the exchanges. And I suspect you've got some ideas about that, but I'll kick it off with number one. Number one way to avoid a crypto scam is don't invest in crypto. And therefore,
yeah, that's true.
You're covered. Where would you go from there?
Yeah, that's a great one. Okay, number two would be to buy crypto and self-custody it and not do anything else with it. That doesn't take that. It's not that hard to learn how to self-custody crypto. You buy a Ledger or a Trezor or a number of other cold storage wallets. The instructions are right there. You follow them. You send the crypto from whatever exchange you bought it from. Hopefully that still is solvent, to your cold storage wallet. That's it. No one can mess with your money. It's yours.
Okay.
So that would be a very safe way to handle crypto. You also don't have to buy it, of course, from an exchange. You could buy it from people or decentralized, and there's other ways to get it. But either way, but self-custody without then doing anything else within crypto. So you're just buying it as an investment, essentially, to hold. with the belief that the future will be brighter is a reasonable way to do it, and certainly avoids crypto scams.
Okay. So if someone did use an exchange, which I assume is like the vast majority of people who buy crypto buy it through an exchange, at least initially. Can you imagine if someone was just innocently, saying, now's my time to get into crypto, and they signed up for FTX and they ordered some crypto and just happened to time it wrong and they lost their money. So that's a possibility going through the exchanges, as we know. Maybe not a high possibility, but it exists, right?
I can't say it doesn't exist, but it's pretty unlikely if you're sort of ready to go. If you get yourself all set up ahead of time, you know what you're doing with your self-custody, you can move your money on there, buy it, and get the stuff out in 15 minutes. I mean, so it's going to be a very short window here. But that isn't to say that there is a window still. And I guess if you're concerned about Gemini or some other exchange that you're using actually going under, probably don't use that exchange. Use one that seems more rock solid, or wait a while. You could just wait a few months, and by then, when things should have shaken out much more than they have right now, and we'll know much more about who's solvent and who isn't. Okay. Right now is probably the time when you're most likely to get hit, even in a smaller window. It's still very unlikely, but it's possible at least.
Are you concerned about Gemini or any of the other exchanges in particular at this moment?
I am concerned about Gemini. There's been some problems with Gemini. Gemini Earn, which is their lending program, which they themselves do not run, but it goes through them, is not processing withdrawals, and it does not look like they will process withdrawals. So I think everyone who had money on there may be screwed. They're saying they're working on it, but that's what everyone says. They're just saying the same thing everyone else says in these positions. So there's no reason to think that it's going to be any better. I'm curious to see if Gemini does something about it or not, because I know they want to be around for the long term with this stuff. And if they do, the Winklevoss twins are billionaires. They can put some money behind this to like make everyone whole and be like the exchange that took care of everyone. They could be that. I don't know how much money it would really cost, but I think it's at least viable. It's at least a possibility. Still, we don't know what everyone's relationships are. There's, especially when you're centralized, there's all this stuff that's hidden. You can't just look on a blockchain and see where all the money's coming and going, which you can to some degree in the world of the Crypto Fatcat. Me and where I live, I can look and see. Actually, I had a friend the other day who I was holding some Bitcoin for a while ago, and he said, "Oh yeah, can I?" He said, "Oh yeah, you're still holding that Bitcoin for me. So can you?" And I said, "I think I sent it to you." He said, "No, you're still holding it." And I said, "Well, the good news is we can just look and see. We can look on the blockchain and see if I sent it to you or not. Like it's all we have to. It's going to be very clear one way or the other. Like we don't have to worry about who's lying, who isn't, if someone's wrong. It's sort of mistake proof in that way. If I didn't send it to you, we'll see I still have it. Not just by the amount that's in my wallet, because I could say, well, that's for other reasons. We can actually see if my wallet ever sent out Bitcoin to the address that is yours, and that timeline that it was supposed to go. That's pretty cool.
It is cool, but wouldn't you say that that's kind of like just an online bank statement where you can show the screenshot of the payment that was sent out of your bank? Like, I did that recently. Someone did that for me when I was selling a used car. They did the bank transfer and they sent me a screenshot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I guess that the
absolutely.
blockchain gives you that extra ability to look at something that's neutral. Someone hasn't sent you a screenshot or shown you anything. You can yourself look at the screen that'll show you the blockchain, so that probably
there aren't too many scenarios where I think you'd worry that the bank was compromised, but there's probably a few here and there in the world, right? Where actually the transaction is big enough. The bank has very close ties to the counterparty, who does a lot of business with them. And actually you might be worried that you're getting screwed. I don't think it would come up much. I acknowledge this, but not at some point it would matter. And the blockchain, is completely unbiased, and it's just its own thing. It has nothing to do with you or your counterparty. And that's kind of a beautiful thing.
It is, because I think there is a scam that happens somewhat routinely on Facebook Marketplace where someone sort of shows a screenshot of, I've sent this to your bank for whatever, $200 for that phone that you're selling. And the person sends them the phone after they've gotten the screenshot, and the screenshot was manipulated. It was fake. Yeah.
Also, there's chargebacks, like where people will, with their credit card or whatever, maybe where someone pays for something and then claims they didn't get it or wants the money back for whatever reason. So sometimes they get the product or the service and also gets their money back because the bank doesn't really know who's in the right and who's in the wrong. or their credit card company doesn't know. And sometimes they side with you, and if you're assuming you're there on the right side of things, but they don't always. I've certainly heard a lot of horror stories. The blockchain has nothing to do with any of that. If you sent it, it's gone. It's wherever you sent it. That's it. There's no haggling with the blockchain, And I think there's something beautiful about the finality of it, as opposed to like asking humans to get involved. Clearly, there's times when that's going to be problematic too, for sure. But I think if you have to pick a system, I prefer this system of finality rather than, sometimes the richer guy just gets to win because he can, he can say, oh, well, let's just go to court for the next 10 years and I'll throw lawyers at you forever and I'll just bankrupt you if you want to dispute this, buddy, or just take this much smaller settlement, things, all sorts of things can happen, right?
No, I hear you. But like I had a wallet that was stolen while I was in Spain, and a lot of stuff happened in Spain. And yeah, there was someone who was using my credit card for going through tolls. I think it might have been a truck driver because it was just like months of tolls going up and down. And I would call the credit card company every month and I'd say, hey, that card that I reported stolen, that's canceled, it's still having charges come through to me. And they would say, oh, okay, sorry about that. And they would, refund me or cancel that from my statement so I didn't have to make the payment. So in that case, like it actually worked out pretty well. My stuff was stolen, but I didn't lose from that. Whereas let's say, let's continue on with the how not to get scammed in the crypto world. With what you've already mentioned, like don't leave your money in an exchange because the exchange could go bankrupt, which has just happened. But also it seems like there's more hacks that happen on the exchange, whereas you're safe from that if you're in cold storage, right?
Cold storage, you are essentially as safe as you can be.
Okay. Yeah.
So besides that, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say, like other ways to avoid getting scammed in crypto is if you're doing decentralized finance, then, like only use products and projects that are famous, are well known. Make sure you're actually on the right page. That's theirs. The easiest way to do this is to find their Twitter and click through whatever link they give you on their Twitter. It's easy to tell, like Aave, which is the biggest decentralized lender in the world. If you go to their, they've got like 1.2 million followers or something like that on Twitter. And I think there are many fake Aave Twitter accounts too, but they have, 50 followers, 100 followers. It's pretty easy to tell who's who because they can't get a million followers like Aave. So then you see that's the real Twitter account. You click through the link they give you there, and then everything is fine. So that's one of the ways I do it personally to make sure I'm safer. That's a big one for sure. The other thing is too, like talking about crypto scams, like a classic crypto scam is it seems like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or someone of their ilk is giving a talk, Vitalik Buterin, who's the creator of Ethereum, giving a talk on YouTube, and it's like a live talk supposedly, or it's a talk, it's a video of them talking, and underneath in the comments, or even in the description, it says like, incredible giveaway right now as a thank you or whatever reason they give. Send us 1.5 ETH, we'll send you back 3 ETH. Send us 5 ETH, we'll send you back 10 ETH. Send us 20 ETH, we'll send you back 40 ETH. We'll double whatever you send us. And they do some Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other things. This never works. It's only ever a scam. It's 100% of the time a scam. So you also have to bring some level of street smarts to this stuff and not think like, oh, well, this is probably a good idea. Because people make huge mistakes like that all the time too. And that's the kind of thing where you have to think like, why would Elon Musk be giving away millions of dollars to random crypto addresses for no gain of his own? Why would he do that? Of course he wouldn't, right? As opposed to like, it somehow benefits Tesla. It somehow benefits him personally. This wouldn't benefit him in any way. It would just cost him money. Rich people don't just give away their money. It's important for people to understand that. They almost never do that. And when they do, it's to very particular causes and people, not just randos, which is what we all are, especially when we're just an Ethereum address or a Bitcoin address. They would never do that. They're never going to do that. Don't think they're going to do that.
Okay. So there's someone down here who was in the paper recently for losing a couple of $100,000 of their life saving. And apparently this scam, which was a crypto scam, was called slaughtering the pig. And it's sort of what they call the scam that happens worldwide, where they first build up a relationship with someone, via online dating, or a common way actually that apparently it happens too is they call a number by mistake or text a number by mistake saying something like nice about like, oh, hey, hope the birthday that you had was fun. And the person's like, oh, this isn't who you think it is. And then, they do that, whatever, 1,000
Yeah.
times. Maybe out of the 1,000, 100 people or 50 people respond to them. And then 5 of those 50 people actually continue the back and forth text. And they build up a little bit of relationship with this person, often turns into, video calls or chats. And the person starts to feel like they have a relationship with this person who they've met just randomly.
Yeah.
And that's what happened here. And then it sort of felt like a little romantic to this person. And then it was like, oh, hey, look at, I can't believe how much money I'm making in crypto recently. Oh, really? Oh, that's cool. Yeah, look at this. And they'll send a screenshot of like, I invested $5,000 last month and I made $32,000 in 1 month. And then that happens a few times. And then, the person might ask, how do I get into that? Or then they'll
Yeah.
say, hey, if you're interested and you wanted to try it out, you could try it out like on a small scale. And the person will be like, oh, okay. And they'll send like whatever, 500 or $1,000. And the person will open the account for them with this crypto trader who's really excellent. And then the crypto trader sends the person like official looking documents and screenshots that shows, hey, in the last month, your 1,000 has gone up to, 8,500. Would you like to put in more? And so this person ended up anyways putting in like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the whole thing was a scam. And the screenshots of the returns that they were making were just falsified and made up. The person felt really, really silly afterwards, of course, and ashamed of what they had done. But apparently it happens not that uncommonly because the person thinks they have a relationship with this online person. And then there's introduced this financial opportunity,
Yeah.
slaughtering the pig.
It's a weird name for it, but okay.
Yeah, apparently the
Yeah.
person
So
they're referring to as the target is the pig. I mean,
yeah.
it's despicable that there's people out there who think like that and have no problem whatsoever with, or apparently have no problem with treating people like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to some degree, that's Sam Bankman-Fried, right? He did his own version of slaughtering the pig.
Wow, God, it's so true.
It's like a global version of slaughtering the pig is what
Wow.
happened here.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely, right? Built a
Yeah. And
relationship, was like super nice and responsive and talking, a really inspiring game. And turns out he was just a fraud.
yes. I never know what we're going to talk about when we start these. Like we started this one, you said, "Do you want to know what we're going to talk about today?" I said, "Nope." And so here we are. But I thought it was possible that you were going to be talking about the texts and the exchanges Sam Bankman-Fried's had with some of the media that's been posted on Twitter, because there's some really rough stuff out there. This is post all the scandal where he's sort of talking unvarnished, or much more unvarnished anyway, about his thoughts and feelings about everything and who he really was and why he was doing the things he was doing. And it's rough. It's a hard
Really?
read.
What are some
Yeah.
examples of that?
I mean, they're asking about like the crypto regulations, which he was championing. And it's like, was that just PR or was that for another reason? Or did you really believe it? And he said, oh no, it was all PR. Never believed any of it. Didn't care. Stuff like that, and it's like,
Wow.
oh,
Is he not concerned about spending the rest of his life in jail?
I guess he isn't. I guess he thinks he's got $1 billion and he can buy his way out of anything. And he might be right. Usually people don't go to jail for very long for financial crimes, right? I mean, that kind of never happens. So
Yeah, you're
we'll
right.
see. But, that's like, think about 2008. No one went to jail. Lehman happened. Bear Stearns happened. No one went to jail. It destroyed the world economy for years. No one went to jail. And those guys knew that they were riding the lightning. At least some of them did.
Yeah.
Right. And did not care. And there was there were fines, but more to the companies, I think, than to the individuals, even like,
Yeah. Madoff
they
was
take
the
care
only
of
one,
this.
maybe. Like
The
Madoff.
world is, yeah. And that was the different thing anyway, right? I mean, the world is sort of designed by the rich to take care of the rich. I mean, it sucks, but to some degree it's true.
Well, how different was Madoff really to what SBF was doing? He was taking the new money that was coming in and he was using it to pump up
it was a little different, right? I mean, like he did operate an actual exchange, which really did work and you could use, like regularly all the time with no problem. So that was different.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think for a while, until Alameda started to go insolvent or had money issues, like everything was doing what it was supposed to do, and they maybe didn't have any untoward thoughts about things. But as need arose, their default move was to screw people over, or take chances that would ultimately result in people getting screwed over if bad things happened, rather than do the more conservative thing and just say, oh, we screwed this one up and take a loss here and there and stuff like that. And so here we are.
Well, even the whole system though seemed like it was quite very, very cynical of like, let's, create a token. So this was FTT, Sam Bankman-Fried's token, or whether it was even some other random token, like that whole thing of like, hey, let's create a token where there's whatever, 10 million of them, 2 million of them. And, we're going to have a counterparty buy whatever, 100,000 of them at this price. We're going to set a market price basically. So the, Alameda is going to buy however many hundreds of millions of dollars of worth, or however many millions of dollars worth of FTT, and set the market so that the price seems like it is, whatever it was. Whereas
this isn't really what happened.
Well,
I don't think that's what happened.
They held the vast majority of FTT tokens, like without releasing them.
Fine.
That's fine. That's fine that
they held them.
Yeah, but the
rest of the world was transacting for years with an FTT, buying and selling FTT. Alameda wasn't there backstopping every single sale, making sure that the price didn't fall to a certain level. Were they? Is that what we're saying? Because then if they were, then Alameda was everyone else's exit liquidity, if that's true. And then they did everyone a favor. And if they weren't, then it was just a free market. It's one or the other.
It was not a free market. And from what I've read, it was not even close to a free market. It was like, okay, let's have a market maker set the price for this token, and we're going to withhold as much of the token as we need to maintain that price. And then we're going to, all this vast sum of tokens that we've withheld, which is much, much, much greater than what's out there in the market, we are then going to price at that market price, and we're going to borrow against it. So we've released 10% of this token. It's worth, so it tells us our reserves are worth $2 billion. We're borrowing other assets for that 2 billion, and then they traded those other assets.
Look, maybe the moment when they decided to decide the value of FTT for their how much it would be worth as collateral, they like made sure the price was a certain price point before they did that. That's possible, and then that could have led to all this other trouble. So I'm not saying there's nothing to it, but you make it sound like for years essentially they artificially propped up the price of FTT. Yep. And if they did, then they're doing everyone else who doesn't own a lot of FTT a favor. Everyone who owned some and sold it at any point, they did a favor because they got to sell it for more than it was worth. Like they're the ones who took the bath on that. Now, of course, they didn't because they were borrowing money against it. So there's that piece too. It's a complicated issue, is I guess what I'm saying. And I think it's easy to simplify it down to, oh well, they sold one FTT for $1 million. So then every FTT was worth $1 million. Then everyone thought it was worth $1 million. I think that's an unbelievably simplified version of what happened and not fair to most people, even though these guys are scumbuckets who absolutely effectively stole and thieved their way to all this money and screwed a lot of people over.
Yeah, the next time I'm going to get more details on that so that we can discuss the nitty gritty of it. But my understanding is like, hey, great, you had 10,000 of FTT and it went up to 15,000. Like, oh yeah, you made out. They don't care that you made out. You were irrelevant to the whole thing. It was that then, like, my understanding is that like, oh, we've got 2 billion in FTT tokens that's now worth 5 billion, and we're borrowing other things against that are actually worth real money, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. Yeah, that's
a fair point. I got no good comeback to that one, except.
But we need to clarify that is actually what happened. That's my understanding of what happened. Yeah. Okay.
Fair enough.
All right. So last thing is, you talked about this idea of cold storage. And I just want you to comment on, like, in developing countries, in so-called, in the past, we would say third world countries where there isn't a really good functioning bank system, or the government's quite corrupt. People do save their money and currencies. Like, a lot of them will try to get in South America, for example, US dollars, because they'll hold their value better than the local currency, and they might hide them under the mattresses. And sometimes they do big transactions with that too, like buying houses, et cetera, in just USD cash. Like I heard that in Argentina, for example, you're buying a house, it's priced in US dollars, not in the local currency, because that's so, varies so much and the inflation is so huge there. You meet in the basement of the bank to close the deal, and then you'll bring your bag of cash from the vault, give it to them, and they'll put it into their vault, so it never leaves the bank. But more commonly, as a lot of people have cash hidden at home, and so in the so-called developed world, like, we thought we'd moved on from that to a system that is safer and better, where you can just put your money in the bank, and that it's like, fairly safe in the bank. So now what you're talking about, I could see if the crypto market was functioning really well, And it did actually act as a store of value. Well, it seems pretty cool in those developing countries to be able to, save all your money on a thumb drive rather than have to have bags of cash hidden in the attic or at the local bank where who knows what's going to happen. So that's pretty
Or
cool.
could burn down in an incident,
Yeah.
get lost, get destroyed. Yeah.
But in let's say the US, like you can just put that money in the bank, and that was considered like a real progress for humanity. Like your money's safe.
Yeah.
Like it's an electronic thingy that you can look at on your online banking statement. It's there for you, and you can get your whopping 0.5% return per year. And it's a big step ahead of the money in the mattress. So what you're saying, though, if people in the US started using the cold storage, is they're doing a version of the money in the mattress, a much better version, because it's much more portable, it's much easier to hide, much safer, but you could still be destroyed, you could still lose it. And I know there's that 12 phrase passcode, but that's kind of also like most people are going to write that down. I
Yeah.
don't know. Is it that easy to remember? It doesn't seem like it's the most
No. You
secure
have to write it.
way. Yeah.
You have to write it down. You have to write it down. If no, you get hit in the head or you could die and then no one has access to your money. That doesn't work either. It has to be written down somewhere. No, you have to do things, but either way, you're taking a risk, right? You're either taking a risk that the bank is going to actually pay you when they're supposed to. And I know it sounds like in America, it always works that way. It doesn't always work that way in America. It works pretty well. It works well enough. I mean, I use the banking system, don't get me wrong, but like, let's not pretend that it's super easy and great. And the bank doesn't report every time you show up with more than $10,000 to put in they report it to people, it isn't like there's eyes on it. You have to hope they give you your money when you ask for it, which if it's in small amounts, of course they do. With big amounts, I've had to wait several days, many times for bigger amounts of money from the bank, which is absurd to me. And they're like, why do you want it? And I'm like, fuck you. That's why. It's none of your goddamn business. That's why I want it. What are you talking about? It's my money. You don't get to know that. They're, of course, charging different kinds of fees. They're doing all sorts of stuff. And ultimately, I think the bigger concern, though, than all the things I'm saying is the idea of when there's a government in place that you don't agree with, or more importantly, doesn't agree with you and sees you as a threat of any kind, they have the ability to freeze those funds when they're in the bank. And we've seen the Canadian government do that recently when the truckers were striking and they froze all the truckers' money. I don't know why. I think that's very weird. I don't agree necessarily with the truckers' politics on this either, to be clear. Like, it isn't like I think I'm the opposite of the truckers' politics on this. But still, to me, that was a very strange. They aren't criminals. They were just striking. They were protesting. And they not only froze all their bank accounts, they froze all people who donated to them. All their bank accounts, not all of them, some of them, I think, but some of them as well. Like, that is crazy stuff. And I don't know who's going to be president of the United States in 2 years. I know Trump just announced he's running again. I can picture all sorts of different kinds of administrations, and I know I won't agree with a lot of them. And I am sometimes vocal about this, and I don't want them just to have the ability to shut down all of my finances and control all of them when I haven't done anything wrong, or at least in my opinion, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not a criminal, I haven't, but like if I say something or tweet something that like they could punish me in different ways, but freezing all my finances doesn't feel like a reasonable punishment. I'm not willing to be part of that system in any real way. And this is what I'm talking about, is something that is consistent and constant in the world. Like, it doesn't happen that much in the US, I'll agree with you, or probably where you live in New Zealand, maybe a little, but not a lot. But I think as we see the rise of more right-wing governments, we may see more of that. By the way, also the rise of more left-wing governments, because that's the Canadian government who did this, was a left-wing government against right-wingers. I think it goes both ways. As the political spectrum gets more combative, we may see more of this type of behavior. I don't want to be caught in the crossfire on either side. I just want to stay out of it all, and it's very hard to do sometimes. This is a way to avoid all that. That whole piece, they don't get the ability to shut you down. That feels really important to me, especially if you're talking about significant amounts of money. There are other issues. Yes, you have to know how to self-custody. You have to do it well. You have to have backups. You have to have backups that are safe. It's not necessarily free and completely easy, but I think everything has big risks. And you just have to choose which risks you want to take. And pretending that putting all your money in a bank carries no risk, I think, is a nice tune you can tell yourself, but I don't think it's grounded in true reality, especially as I watch the division in, say, the United States politically, let alone the rest of the world.
I think you make some good points. And I think that, the key, I suppose, is the risk of leaving your money in the bank, which maybe you've done for decades and it's been fine so far. Is it still less risky than, buying some crypto and storing it locally? I suppose.
Mhm.
And if should the world become more extreme, it's going to be, which it seems to have done in the last 5 years, let's say, governments around the world. If that pattern was to continue, well, it might not. Hopefully, it won't. But if it was to continue, then yeah, is that something that turns out to be a real positive for the crypto market?
I mean, yes, but it's not worth it. I like the crypto market to succeed on other fronts personally and for other reasons, but we'll see
Yeah.
if it's going to go that way. Anyway, with that, I have to run. So I'm out.